Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Whatnauts review show. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined, as always, by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, hello, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm tired. Last night I went to the world's most inefficient trivia night.
Oh, man. Wait, is this one you were hosting, or were you
No,
participating in?
I'm not hosting trivia anymore. My day job's become a
Ah,
little bit too it takes up too much of my time and energy and
sure.
schedule now. I was attending one of those community center fundraiser trivia nights
Okay.
for the neighbors of a friend of mine who sponsor like a little girls softball team.
Oh, fun.
Yes, there's just like a gaggle of girls, all under 10, just running around. And the night starts. They keep pushing back the start time. They're like, we're going to start in 2 minutes. We're going to start in 2 more minutes. Okay, we're going to get started. And they keep losing where they are on the PowerPoint with the questions. They have to keep
Amazing.
flipping backwards. If you just yell out, tell me that question again, they'll just go back and do it at any time. So it's not like hold all repeats until the end. After they give us the questions for round one, then they have to announce that it's somebody's birthday. And then the girls all come out with these trays of cupcakes, and you get a free cupcake, which is pretty cool.
Right.
But they haven't even gone over the round one answers yet. And we have to stop and have this 10-minute diversion.
The answers were hidden inside the cupcake on pieces of paper, right? You bite into it and like, oh, I got it right. Bingo.
There's no telling when a break will happen. They do not hold you to the break times. Again, it's we're going to give you 2 more minutes, and then they give us 5 more minutes.
That's so funny.
And then when they are calling out the winners of the raffle baskets, all the girls have to get involved. So one girl picks the ticket out of the bucket, but another girl gets to read the number off of the ticket. And so it takes 2 girls per basket. There's like a dozen baskets. This thing was like over 3 hours long. This was probably longer than the Oscars will be tonight. I was out so late.
That's great. That's where you like heading back, kind of smiling and laughing and just like taking it all in, being like, this is kind of chaotic and I like it? Or were you like, oh my God, let me host
chaotic.
this. Like, let me host this. I know how to make this work on time. And
and it was hosted, I think, just by the coach of the girls' softball team, who's in coach mode. She spends the whole night like wrangling the girls. Like they had a photo booth set up at the back of the room, which is just one tinsel curtain and like a little tripod you can put your own phone onto. And the girls are back there horsing around taking pictures, and she keeps interrupting the trivia night to say, girls, be careful. Calm down.
Girls? That's good though. It's good to at least support the fundraiser, right?
Yeah.
Good fun time.
I wish those girls the best in their fast pitch softball league.
Awesome. Good stuff. So the stuff that I've been up to, I'll tell a little bit more at the end of the podcast because Melissa, we've officially entered Mecca March. So more on that later. But we are not here to talk about all of that. We are here to talk about a comic book called Love Everlasting. This is written by Tom King and Elsa Charretier on artwork. This is published by Image Comics. One that we kind of found, or I had heard of when it initially came out, and I think on your own you had kind of heard about it, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe I told you about it. But
you probably told me about it.
Either way, we were like, this sounds really cool. We should do this on the show at some point. And we just had to wait for more of the book to come out. So currently there are 2 volumes out, though the single issues for the 3rd volume are technically out. We did not read
Mhm.
those ones. We only read the first 2 volumes. I think the third, like, actual collected edition volume is coming out this September in
Mm,
2025. So
good.
I'm looking forward to that. Um, but yeah, this is cut like not really our delayed Valentine's Day thing, but kind of is. We did all of For All Mankind in February, so here we are with some kind of romance, something shortly after that. Um, Melissa, from your recollection, what did I tell you this comic book was? How did I describe it initially to you?
Y I think you said it was a psychological horror where a woman is trapped in a series of old-time, uh
Like
hand up on the
romance
head,
comics,
"Oh,
yeah.
Brad," the stuff that, Roy Lichtenstein, was turning into his paintings. The
Right.
dramatic, tearful eyes filled with tears, the beautiful
Yeah.
bombshell who's like, "No, but I can't, and I must have him." It's that, but you're stuck in one after the other, and you can't leave. There's no
Right.
win condition. It's just that forever.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. I think when I initially told you about it, I described it as a time travel story, or it's like kind of time travel-y, but not
Mm,
really. I think that's the word I used to describe it. But it's not a time travel story, and yeah, you're right. It is this woman who is stuck in these like romance comic, not landscapes, but basically the premise is every time Joan Peterson falls in love, she is violently thrust into some kind of new reality that is in homage to these romance stories.
mhm.
They're not necessarily limited to comics, but like romance movies and romance
Yes.
books and comics and stuff like that. And it turns into a mystery of what is happening, why is this happening, did I do something to make this happen, did someone do this to me, and it turns into something so much more after that. So I think when I initially pitched this to you, I kind of pitched it wrong, and that's almost what I was sold on. But this is now the second time that I've read this book, and I had equally a great time
Mhm.
in this second read through here. But what did you think, Melissa? Now that we've read these first 2 volumes here,
It's a great mystery. At the end of these 2 volumes, there's not much. You've learned less than you think you would have, but in a captivating way.
right?
You're really in the same boat as Joan, trying to figure out, "What is this? How did she get here? Why does it keep happening? How does she break out?" And we leave, I think, the second volume on a great step forward. She has a new goal. We don't know
Yeah,
how she's going to accomplish it, but at least she's got one now.
right. Yeah. Um, I think also earlier when we decided to do these for the podcast finally, I don't think I remembered that a third volume was coming out. um and so I was like, yeah, the story's complete in 2 volumes, and I kind of forgot about those last couple pages, and I was like, oh yeah, a third volume is coming. I kind of forgot about that. But regardless of that, like, even if the story, like, if you take away those last couple pages, you kind of have a complete story. Like, it really
Yeah.
leaves off in a really interesting place that I'm kind of satisfied with, even if they don't
Yeah.
solve the quote unquote mystery. I'm kind of fine where it leaves off. I'm, yeah, you know. um but yeah, I've had a great time with these. I own these 2 volumes physically.
They look
Um,
nice.
yeah, this first volume here has Joan in her wedding dress holding a shotgun and covered in blood. Um, so yeah, it's an oddly funny book without it being a comedy. It's just like comedy of circumstances of like, oh no, I'm in
Mhm.
another romance. Yeah, like here we go. Uh,
And it takes a little while for her to become aware. Like, she spends the first story falling in love with this man named George, and then she's dropped into another story where
yeah,
she's in love with a Bill or a Chad or a Ken or something, and she's like, "Oh, I love him." But wait, what? Wasn't I in love
but what
before?
about Dan? What about
What
George? Yeah,
what about George? Like, it's this sort like every for the first couple jumps, she is almost like waking up from a dream, struggling to remember something, having deja vu. And
yeah,
after a couple times, she's like, wait, I have done this before. Why does this keep happening to me?
yeah,
Why? And it, who am I really in love with? Is it any, was it the first guy? Is it any of these guys?
right, yeah. Um, yeah, I think the book is a lot of fun. I think the second volume especially will give you a good old gut punch and hit you right in the emotions. I think the art in this book is fantastic. It is perfect. It's like it does reminds me of those old like Roy Lichtenstein
Mm,
paintings, those like classic comic look. But also Chartier has a way to also make it
yeah.
feel like new and modern and exciting.
Yes.
And I think it works really really well. I think for Tom King writing this book, I think at first glance it's kind of a surprise that like this is Tom King writing this book. Okay, and that's not to say that like Tom King is bad. I like his stuff a lot,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it like I don't know. There's something about this book that I kind of don't expect from Tom King. But he also does tend to do like when he's able to do these runs on characters within the like DC universe or Marvel universe, like the Vision, which we've covered
Yes.
here on the show. He really breaks the characters down to tell some very human story. Um, and I think that's really shining through here in this book here, since it is about love and starts to kind of ask these questions of like, what is love? Is it okay if love looks like this? Is it okay if it looks like that? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, right?
Right. That is the log line of the entire thing. What is love? Cowboy, don't hurt me.
Right, yeah, exactly. um so yeah, I really recommend these books. I cannot wait for the third volume to come out, because I will certainly be picking that one up. Do you have any other kind of stuff that stood out to you that you want to say spoiler free?
I like that we read this because when we talk about those romance comics of like the 60s and 70s, I can't name one specifically. I can't name a specific character or series or writer or an artist. We mostly know them as the secondary pop culture byproduct of the Liechtenstein paintings we keep referencing.
They also have
Everybody,
they also tend to have nondescript titles like Young Romance or like
yes,
Millie the Model, right?
right. Like we all know the tropes, but the actual content of them feels so anonymous. And I'm happy we did have a title that looked closely at those
Sure.
tropes at least. So we had to cover this in some format on the show.
Yeah, I still think it would be fun to go back and look at
Yeah.
some of those originals, to
And there's
see like what can we find out of them.
right. And there must be people who are really, really into those and do have recommendations like, oh, Young romance number 12, that's like the long Halloween of these things. That's
Right,
the
yeah.
good stuff.
That's the Batman Court of Owls of romance
Right.
comics,
Like,
you know?
there must be some sort of hierarchy that you and I just can't see, and I would love to be introduced to.
Yeah. Good stuff indeed. Yeah. I think that is about it for our spoiler-free stuff. So let's take a quick break for housekeeping, and we will dive a little bit more in depth to the stories here and start getting into spoilers. So we'll be right back. Thank you so much for checking out this podcast. We hope you're enjoying it. If you didn't know, we make multiple different shows here at the Whatnauts, and a lot of hard work goes into making them, so we would love it if you check them all out. But none of this is possible without your support. Head over to patreon.com/thewhatnauts, and you can get access to over 40 hours of exclusive content, including our Patreon first podcast, The Pilots Club, when you sign up at our $3 tier. Of course, there is a free version of the Pilots Club available, but episodes are exclusive to our Patreon for 2 years before they hit the free feeds. If you're interested in buying merch, we have shirts, hoodies, mugs, and more for sale over at thewhatnauts.com/store. Another great way to help us out is by subscribing and leaving a nice rating and review on your podcasting app of choice. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for video versions of the show, trailer reactions, and live streams. And lastly, you can always find out more information about the shows we make on our website, thewhatnauts.com. All right, we are back. Once again, a big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
It means a ton. Over on the Pilots Club, Melissa and I, right after this, are going to be recording an episode on Matlock, the new one, which I ended up watching last night. It was a delight, which is all I will say on that right now. But be on the lookout for that episode. I think we're gonna have a blast. And then on the free version of the Pilots Club, we are just about to release our episode on CSI, the original pilot of CSI. I had a blast when we recorded that one as well, just trying to go back to like early 2000s nostalgia, right?
Yeah.
So good stuff. Good stuff over there. Right here on the review show, I kind of already mentioned it earlier in the show, but in the previous month, we covered the entirety of For All Mankind, a long-running show over on Apple TV. There's currently 4 seasons out.
Right, as long-running as anything on Apple TV Plus is.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Is Mythic Quest on like season 7 or something like that? I think that's maybe the longest one.
I don't think so. Apple TV Plus, For All Mankind might have been one of the shows it launched with, and it's not that old of a platform. But as far as I can tell, they do stick with their shows. Like the shows that work for them do quietly keep running time after time. And For All Mankind is one of these. We covered its 4 seasons that have been released, and it is slated for more seasons and possibly even a spinoff.
Yeah. Mythic Quest only has 4 seasons, the 4th of which is currently airing right now. So anyways, yeah, we covered For All Mankind. We did it in 2 parts. So we talked about the first 2 seasons on one episode, and then the 3rd and 4th on our second episode. But that was a lot of fun, especially if you like space travel and sci-fi and hard sci-fi especially. But it is a great drama show. So go check out our episodes on that as well. Over on the Captain's Log, our previous episode, I got to talk about a movie that Melissa recommended that my partner and I watch called Hundreds of Beavers. And we freaking loved it. It's incredible. What a great recommendation. Too bad it's not winning
I really
all of the
try.
Oscars, because it deserves all of them. It's incredible.
Every Everyone.
Right, every
Get out of
single
here,
one.
Adrian Brody.
Best actor, Beaver, number 3.
Best actor, Sherlock Beaver.
Right, yeah,
Best supporting actor, Watson Beaver.
Yeah, we had a great time talking about that. Melissa, you gave your Wet Awards, in which you ranked all the Best Picture nominees from wettest to driest. This is now our 3rd annual Wet Awards.
I think next year I'm gonna change it up and pick some other arbitrary spectrum on which to rank 10 very important films.
Sure, yeah. And then we also did some Oscar predictions, some blind Oscar. I did some Oscar predictions.
You did blind ones, I did informed ones, heavily researched ones.
Yeah, you said the Oscars are on tonight, right? Is that
tonight?
Yeah, we are recording this March 2nd. So
be there. I think it starts at like 6 in our time zone.
Okay.
Turn on your ABCs and Hulus. Be there.
There you go. And then last but not least, over on the Reactor Core, we have some coverage of Severance Season 2 up there. We did the first 5 episodes. And we also have Captain America Brave New World. So that's up there currently. Be on the lookout for our second half of Severance Season 2 coverage. And then I know I eventually would like to do something for Yellow Jackets down the road too, which I still haven't started yet. So no spoilers. All right. No spoilers, everyone. But yeah, I'm excited for all of that. But that is about it for housekeeping. So let's get into spoilers.
Kyle, I love that we both showed up to talk about this romance comic in our little pink shirts.
Yeah, did not plan it. It was just the one that was on top of my shirt drawer of this is the one Kyle should wear next.
Good. It's preordained.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we did end up showing up in pink. Good stuff. Our belated Valentine's Day episode.
Sure.
Indeed. Cool. Yeah, Melissa, where do you want to start with this? Do you want to talk about the bit of the mystery and what we do know about that?
Yes, there is a woman named Joan Peterson. She's always named Joan Peterson, as she regenerates into each different romance story from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. We never get higher than that, I don't think. It's an interesting,
at least yet.
We don't have a future one, I don't think, or even 80s big business. Right. New York City yuppie romance.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to see some kind of John Carter of Mars, space sci-fi thing. Adam Strange or what have you?
Doc Savage.
Right? Yeah, even something like that.
But and we go as far back as I think, Wuthering Heights times.
Yeah.
So scattered throughout the later, maybe 1900s and the early 20th century. They're all very specific. You recognize these. It is exactly a dime store romance novel or graphic novel or comic. I'm in love with my best friend's boy. I'm in love with a soldier. Will he die in war? I'm in love. I'm a nurse and I love this patient, but he's doomed to die. It's my father doesn't understand, and it's all of those. On purpose, consciously. They are all the simplest, most hackneyed, tropey things you've ever heard. And as soon as she kisses,
go ahead.
As soon as she kisses the boy and is like, yes, I do love you. I will marry you. It starts over again. Yeah. And she's like, wait, hold on. She is whiplash. I love George, unless I love Dale.
Yeah, but Dale, he's cute. No, I love these little title cards that we get every time
Yes.
like one of the new romances starts or it's a new chapter in the stuff. And it yeah, like you said, exactly what you know, exactly what you think of. Here's one from the like maybe end of the first issue. It says Sal came to our hospital to die. He'd given up all hope of fighting the disease ravaging his body. But that's when I met him. That's when I discovered that I too could be sick with love. And it's like
It's
her
always
making
the
out with this guy on the hospital
it's always
bed.
a big love phrase splashed across
Yeah.
this title page. There's seemingly an infinite number of them,
Too
and
hip for
she is
love.
aware of them in some way. I think after a while, whatever the title of the story is becomes like her inner monologue, becomes her mantra. She knows when she must say it again. She knows when she's reached another title page.
Yeah, it's not just that we are reading a comic about her and the comic is
Mm,
made in a comic book fashion, but it seems that something about this mystery is trapping her in these
yes.
tropes, and she is becoming more and more aware of these tropes and saying the things you would expect or doing the things you would expect. Or not expect, right? Because I think she is also trying to break out of these things, obviously, but that in and of itself is potentially also like that's almost like the horror trope, right? Like or like a number of years ago we covered the movie Ready or Not, which
I did think of Ready or Not.
is
Yes.
kind of what
Yes.
this cover looks like, right?
A
She's
bloody
just
bride.
covered in blood, like smoking a cigarette with a shotgun, just having killed all of the in-laws and stuff like that. So yeah, there are these like horror aspects to the book too that it's playing on. Right, just from the violence that happens every time she does fall in love, and this mysterious cowboy shows up to kill her.
Yeah, which is the one real remnant that follows her around as she's quantum leaping among all these stories. She's in a Western love triangle very briefly.
Yeah,
And then when she gets out of that one of those cowboys is still there, like stalking her, following her around. He is the force that is there to like kill her and force a restart if things aren't going the way they're supposed to go.
yeah. And as we get further in the book, we learn that this might be something that has been done to her. It is not
Yes.
something she stumbled into on her own, or right. It's not a time travel story, but it appears, at least by the end of these first two volumes, that it has something to do with her mom. Maybe her mom
Mhm.
has cursed her, or who knows what. Her mom has
Or like
set
or like
in motion these events.
yeah, like this is punishment or it's training. Like
Right. Trying to teach you
you
a
will marry
lesson.
right, you will marry well, and I will show you how to marry well through a series of terrifying old school romance comic tropes. Like
Yeah.
even the guys who don't seem like a good match, something changes, there's some reveal. Like she's some beatnik who like sneaks out of her parents' house and uh goes into the city and dances in the jazz clubs, and she's in love with Kit who just wants to be a rock star. But it turns out Kit is the son of her dad's golf buddy, and he's like, if I need to be the man our parents want us to be in order to marry you, I'll do it.
Right. Yeah.
So
He's like,
you get the
wow,
best of both worlds.
Kit's
You get the
father
wild
is the
card.
best man that I know. Right.
Right. You get the wild card and you get father's choice. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
rarely somebody who is truly on the outskirts, on the fringe, not a desirable match.
Yeah. Um,
More
And
often, she is the undesirable one, like in the story where she is
sure,
the nursemaid's child at this, like, Wuthering Heights estate, and she wants to marry the young lord of the manor, and they're against her instead of it being the other way around, the family.
yeah. Um, yeah, or like she is just like the teenage daughter sneaking out and drinking or going to clubs
I
and stuff like that, which is
Mhm.
not necessarily the worst thing, but it is
Right,
it,
and
it is just like, oh, she's a little more free or a little more loose. She
yes.
wants to be out there. She wants to be a little more wild than maybe she is.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
maybe
And
hasn't had the opportunities yet, but right, I think the book is trying to push her to like, no, calm down, like settle in, find a husband, have two kids, right? Get that white
mhm.
picket fence house, which is kind of what happens. She does end up being like, well, you know what? If it keeps happening, I might as well just give in and do it
Yeah,
this once. And
right.
it sticks. And she's confused by
Yeah,
that. And she's like, why isn't the
right.
cowboy here? Um,
And then the
and
cowboy is there just stalking her, but it's not clear what exactly it is she wants to do. Like, it's this guy named, I think it's Brian in that story, right?
something like
He's the
that.
guy
Yeah.
who's there the longest. You'd think I would remember his name, but they are all these just interchangeable 20th century white guy names.
Right. Yeah.
I'd love a whole Mambo number 5 exclusively of this series' man names. But he's just like a big, soft, sweet, like stable guy. And she's like, this isn't so bad. Like, I don't love him, but there's nothing wrong here. Feels kind of safe. And
Yeah.
she actively chooses to be with him, even though she isn't feeling the passion. And this sort of sticks her in a weird limbo where she is continually there. They live a whole life together. It's always the year 1963.
Yep.
She's like, honey, don't you remember when we first met in 1963 and got married in 1963 and our son was born in 1963
And
and we bought our
graduated high
house in
school in
1963?
1963. Right. Yeah.
Right. And then you got that big promotion in 1963 and she spends years of that life in an institution because she's like, no, I'm stuck. This thing has been happening to me. There's a cowboy and it's always 1963 and I don't know what to do about it. And they put her in an institution, and then they're like, well, she's at least stopped talking about it, and she's not a threat to anyone, so I guess she can go back to her family. So she
Yeah.
does, and then she continues to like lead a whole life and like sees her kids grow up and get married. She's grandchildren and great grandchildren, and her husband grows old and dies, and then I love the way that story ends, that she's lived for decades, perpetually in 1963,
Right.
and she goes to this nursing home and really, truly falls in love with one of the men there, another man as old as she is,
Yeah.
uh, and when she kisses him and admits she loves him, that is what kicks her out of the story.
Yeah. I'll come back to something I really want to talk about in this book because you kind of
Mhm.
started to touch on where it all starts. Her husband's name is Don. Um,
Dawn.
yeah, and he's kind of this like Clark Kent looking guy,
Absolutely.
big broad shoulders, looks like he'd work at a newspaper, right? Um, but
Mhm. And specifically Clark Kent, like, he does have this sort
yes,
of softness,
yes, yeah,
the mild-mannered politeness and gee whiz nature of a Clark Kent as
yeah,
opposed to a Superman.
right. Um, but yeah, it is this idea that like she married him, had this whole life to get together, and it turns out that she never truly loved Dawn, right? She just
No.
kind of settled in and had this safe option. Um, and that I'm sure is some kind of big hint or clue as to what is happening here, and what that may or may mean or entail. We do know that when she finally admits to loving this newer, older gentleman, and the cowboy comes and kills her, it's because she truly falls in love with him. Um, and when it resets, she's back to her younger self. It's
Mhm.
not also like okay, like the story has reset, but you're also still like 80, right? It's not
Yeah.
that. It's not like you're now 18 or 21 or
I
however old
I
you
do
were,
I
right?
do wanna point out that only in, like, 2 or 3 of the dozen little romances we see that she's actually a high schooler. A lot of them, she is a young career woman. She
Yeah,
is in her maybe college age, maybe early 20s, and I did appreciate that,
yeah,
uh, which is a time period you don't see represented quite as much. We've talked often on this show about how I've developed a low tolerance for high school stories because it's all I ever seem to get. I like a struggling early 20 something career woman. Really appreciated that. And
for
I think that
sure.
really speaks to the generation of these original stories, the 60s and 70s. You do have more young women going to college or taking a
Yeah,
job and finding romance at that age, like in a professional setting when they're like 24, as opposed to marrying the high school sweetheart at 17.
yeah, and I think that even speaks to comic books history when,
Mhm.
like, even before the superhero craze, they had westerns and romances and sci-fis,
Yes.
and there it was not a like, oh, comics are for kids. All
Mhm.
ages read them and found
Mhm.
stories in them. Whereas I think if you were to do a romance comic, not today, that's not necessary. Like I'm not today, but I think you'd more easily find a like, let's set it in high school and have them be the like
Yeah.
high school sweethearts and do that stuff, right? It would be your modern day Riverdale Archie
Mhm. Yes.
comics stuff. Whereas like you wouldn't get the like mid 20s, if not late 20s career woman romance stuff unless you go into the
Mhm.
like much more indie comics than even Image it is,
Yes.
and stuff like that, which is maybe a little
Yeah.
bit harder to find or know about
And
easily.
these stories in their original incarnation, I think, were meant to be aspirational in some way. Yes, there's all
Mm,
this drama and pining, but it's a life you kind of want to lead. And with the aspirational quality of them, it's a lot of different careers. It's like Barbie dolls. It's like you get to, what if you were a doctor? Uh,
what if you were a
what if you did,
typist? What
what if
if
you
you
were a
were a
lawyer? What if,
farmhand? Yeah.
right? What if you did all these different things and the little glimpses of the professional life I appreciate. And I think it adds a great amount of variety to it beyond just
I-
I'm in high school. I'm going
i'm
to college.
I'm wondering if they're even trying to say something about the idea of people liking those stories, those fantasies, and needing them to kind of break out of the mundaneness of their
Yeah.
home life, of this like, I'm a wife, I have 2 kids, we live in the perfect like white picket fence home, and it just kind of sucks, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not what I expected. My life is boring, maybe. And like they like certain people can want that escape or that, which is why she's even watching TV movies and stuff, and it is the same stories that like she had lived
Yeah.
through earlier, which is a weird that like I don't know. Again, I'll get to something in just a sec that I like. I'm almost more satisfied with if the story
Mhm.
was this one thing, but um,
Mm.
yeah, like I don't know how much they're trying to comment on that or make that connection, because I think as much as that is true, I think you can have other people that are satisfied with that kind of
Yeah.
life too. I'm
Yeah.
just like I do just kind of want to be a stay-at-home mom and take care of the house
Mhm.
and cook and clean, and that's fine. I'm good with that. I'm happy. Like
Mhm.
I'm genuinely happy with that.
Mm.
Um, and so I don't know if they're like I don't immediately see some kind of comment on that of like, and that's okay too. But maybe that is what they're saying with the fact that she got
Mhm.
to marry Don and be with him for so long, right? I'm not sure. I think this book is starting to dig into some of all of these possibilities and ask stuff like, what does love truly look
Yeah.
like? Can it be something for someone and means something entirely different for someone else? Um,
Yeah, and how do you know when you've found it? All of these stories, most of them, until you get to Dawn, end at the height. I love you. Let's kiss. Yes, I'll marry you. It never shows you, I don't want to say the aftermath, but the day-to-day mundanity of, well, we are married and here are small struggles and squabbles and just living and growing and getting through things. So you'd think in another story, once she learns how to do that, that would be the win condition. You not only had a romance, you had a full,
mm,
multi-layered, complex, healthy, mature relationship. But when she does do that, that also solves nothing.
right. Yeah.
She's still living in this weird, like, shadow realm where it's like, I'm married to Dawn. Dawn's very nice, but I can see the seams of everything around us.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, they have some really powerful moments of like even there's the bit where she kills the cat, which is
Yeah.
not something that is depicted on screen, or on the page, so to speak, but that kind of reveal that Dawn knew it was her that killed the cat and just didn't say
Yeah.
anything. I thought was a great moment of just yeah, I knew this was you. What did you want me to do with this? Like there's nothing good that can come out of
Right.
this really. Um so I just kind of let it be. You know? Um but yeah, like I like that even that relationship is depicted with problems and issues and stuff
Mhm.
like that, because that is a very realistic mature interpretation of that, right? It is not this like everything is swell and like
Mhm.
and which there is another character that is like, man, you guys don't ever fight, and she's like, that's not actually true. We do have our fights. I like that they are depicting that, and it is not necessarily a win condition to have a perfect relationship, right?
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
is almost like the quote unquote perfect relationship is one that you might be partly unsatisfied with. You might have some issues or some arguments that come up every now and then, that you will have to work through, right? Um, something I would like to see is if she does get another like long-term relationship, what happens to the love stories where you don't initially fall in love but do later on?
Yeah.
Because that is certainly possible as well. There is like a certain type of love that grows out of relationships like that.
Mhm.
um so I don't know. I think there's lots to explore that they could potentially do here that I hope we will see down the road in volume 3 and beyond. If it goes past that, I'm not
I'm
sure.
not sure.
um
Let's
but there
talk about
is,
the cowboy.
sure, yeah.
Or not. What were you talking about?
I was gonna change this subject to the thing that I was hoping to circle back around to,
Go for it.
to. So one of the things I was really satisfied with this book and why I was like, these two volumes are kind of a complete story. I like that this book kind of puts the mystery on the back burner and almost turns
Mm,
into a story about mental illness or Alzheimer's or
mm,
dementia, where
mm,
it's
mm,
very plausible that this is a person who has some kind of mental illness or mental condition where she is escaping into these fantasies, and maybe this is her at an older age, kind of not really sure what
mm,
reality it is, or if this is a movie she watched when she was younger or a book that she had read. I like that because it's not time travel. It's not a curse on her, right? It is also just it's a tragedy, but it is this like
mm,
romantic tragedy that she is escaping into these romances. Like she is trying to find love. She is finding it, but she also
mm,
can't ever have it. And it like with a book called Love Everlasting, it is this everlasting cycle of her
mm,
continually finding love. Um, and there's something that's just sad and beautiful and romantic about the whole thing of like, you know what, you did have a life well lived. You had a full life. You had two great kids. You had a great husband. Like all of this
mm,
stuff. But even despite all of that, like things can go wrong. You can you know get sick when you're older. You can have these diseases crop up that just affect your life and make you think on things differently. And it's just like yeah, it
mm.
hit the right buttons for me to be like, this is beautiful. I love this.
Yeah.
This is great. And then yeah, she falls in love again in the old folks home, and it's just like, oh, she's
Oh,
like like yeah, it's just this like what a great romance story. And then
yeah.
boom, shotgun right in the face. Here we go
Oh,
again, round 3. All right.
oh,
And it's just like,
ugh.
oh man, like again.
She finally found it with some sweet old guy. Yeah,
Right?
you root
Yeah.
for it. You don't
Yeah.
see enough of it.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing is when you get these romances early on in the book, you're not necessarily rooting for her because I think the tropes are so in your face, right? And so
Yes.
easy to be like, oh, this is the like you're the young professional woman in love with your boss, who also happens to be your roommate's boyfriend at the time, right? Um, and you're not necessarily rooting for those two in that story, and then when it switches it's like, oh, another trope. It's the like secret meetups we can't let the families know, right? And you're not necessarily rooting for them even if you find the story fun and enjoyable, but
Mhm.
it's because we got to spend so much time with her family with Dawn that I think seeing the tragedy of the generations of Dawn passing away, of the kids growing up,
Mhm.
and her kind of falling in love this other time beyond that is just beautiful. Um, I'm good with these two volumes. Story done.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
great book.
It's there's a lot you're wondering about. The sequence where she's talking with, is it Penny? The woman who's like the dating coach or matchmaker?
Yeah.
It's the one time you kinda like step outside of the tropes of the story, and Joan like regenerates, reboots, quantum leaps into just like a waiting room in an office. And there's like no love interest around. And she goes in and she talks to, I want to say Penny,
Yeah, it's like Page
Penny or
Penny or Penny
Paige
Page
or,
or something
yeah.
like that. Yeah. I'm trying to
Uh,
see if I can find
and,
it here. I don't remember where it is exactly though.
and that feels like you are outside the typical story. This feels like it's the control room for
Hmm.
what happens everywhere else.
It's
Uh,
the entry room in The Good Place, right? Where they have to
yes, right.
explain
It's Michael's
everything.
office.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
um
And that's when we're introduced the idea that her mother put her here. We
yes.
don't know again if it's as a punishment, as a trap, or as
Is this an
a preparation of
experiment?
something to come. Yeah. We
Because
never see the mother.
exactly.
Any mothers that are present in her stories are fleeting, insignificant, feel fairly anonymous.
Yeah. Um, and that's an interesting thing too, is that you don't see the mother, right? So we don't,
Mhm.
as of right now, we don't even know if she actually exists. Is the mother just some kind of
Right.
concept to keep her in line?
Right.
Um,
Is it literally your mother, or is it the equivalent of a big brother figure?
right. Yeah. And that's just the thing, is like we don't know where this book is going to go in terms of how sci-fi it will get, or
Mhm.
how weird it's gonna get with all of that stuff. Is the mother the equivalent of number one from God? What's that show
The
called again?
prisoner.
The Prisoner, right?
You're
Like,
you're really That's right to bring up The Prisoner.
yeah,
That wasn't a comparison I had landed on, but The Prisoner operates in a similar way where every episode has this like secret hidden reboot point, and he's in the
yeah,
same situation over and over again, just with a different face plastered onto it. And he's like, I know you're different than before. You have the same name, but I know you're a different person. Who are you? What happened to the last person?
yeah. And the cowboy is the big white bubble that will hunt you if you step out of line.
It's the same.
Honestly, we might be on to something with this. Love everlasting.
Right.
The
It's The
prisoner.
Prisoner, but with romance comedy.
Honestly, that's a good poll. Um, yeah. Now I'm thinking about how this will end, considering how the prisoner ends, which is
Oh my
also
god.
something we covered on the review show here. Go check out our episode on the prisoner. Um, yeah, I'm not sure where this is going, because yeah, I feel like the mystery, we still don't know a lot about what's happening here.
No.
um I I could certainly see them wrapping this book up by the end of the third volume. I know it has taken some time for them to get this collected edition um of the third volume. I don't know when the single issues came out versus how long they've been waiting to get this third one printed, but it's been a while. I remember, I like even looking up some stuff this morning. I saw a Reddit thread from like a year ago that was like, "Are we ever getting a third volume of this?" So, um, Tom King is a busy man for sure. I know he's working on that
He's
new
got a lot.
Lanterns show for HBO Max.
Oh
He's
my
been
gosh.
writing Wonder Woman comics. He's been writing all sorts of stuff. So, oh boy.
Tom King, what can we say?
Indeed, yeah.
Uh, I wanted to talk about the cowboy
Please do.
and how it's not the most obvious choice for this representation of the structure and the forces that surround you and confine you and enforce the law.
Yeah,
Um, Considering all of the different stories Joan has gone through, you could have had a businessman. You could have had like the father figure who's like, I want you to marry somebody from my golf club. You could have had a soldier. You could have even had like one of the hunters from that old like the Victorian times. I keep referring to it as a Wuthering Heights, and I can't even accurately tell you when Wuthering Heights is from. I'm not good with pre 20th century time periods like that. But you could have had like one of those like hunters with like the
sure.
riding crop and the little helmet.
Yeah,
Anybody is a more clear representation of enforcement and punishment. The cowboy's interesting. I think it helps that the cowboy is so clearly out of place. that guy can really only be in one time and location, but he keeps showing up all over the place. He has that bandana that covers half his face.
Right.
He's got the brim cowboy hat brim pulled down over his eyes. He is a more mysterious image than anybody else.
Yeah.
And I'd have to go back and confirm, like I said, for the first couple, we're in the cowboy storyline very briefly. And
That's what
it's
I was
like
kind of trying to look at and confirm.
she's torn between like the new ranch hand and like the son of the sheriff who's in line to become the next sheriff.
It's Chad and Bill.
Chad and Bill. So
Yeah.
is the cowboy who keeps appearing? She never refers to him by name. So I don't know if it is
It's unconfirmed,
Chad
I
or
think.
Bill,
I think
just
it's
an anonymous
unconfirmed.
third cowboy.
I'm trying because I kind of remember when she gets married to Dawn and she ends up running away during the reception. She does
Oh
meet
yeah.
up with the cowboy again. Let me see. Is Dawn in the second? Do you think it married in the second volume? Yeah, it must be.
Yes,
I
it's all in the
I
second volume.
I vaguely remember them exchanging names, or like he says his name and I think it's something else, but I don't actually know. I'm trying to see. There he is, blah 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 blah. He shows up. I don't think he says his name, so it's unconfirmed who he actually is, though we do get one instance of him. There's the instance of the like high school Joan who's just graduated, about to go off to college, and she's falling in love with him. But then he's also there to murder the librarian version of Joan, which is also this like weird. There's multiple Joans in there that's happening. That's the like, is it time travel? What's happening here exactly? But that whole thing is strange because anyone named Joan in the book looks the same.
Oh yeah,
which is also like how sci-fi do you want to get in your speculations here? Are they clones? Is this a simulation? Is that like what's happening here? But it could be absolutely none of that, right? So yeah. The cowboy's a mystery. I don't know if it's something like, have we truly seen his story? Was he Chad or was he Bill there? One is a redhead, but there is that one guy.
The thing about that cowboy storyline is that it's the only one where there's a love triangle, where there are storylines where like she likes one boy and maybe another girl likes that boy. Or she likes one boy, but her parents want her to marry somebody else. But this is one where it seems like she does kind of have feelings for two guys. They are aware of it. They are going to duel it out.
Yeah.
And we don't see much of a start or finish. That's a story that drops you in media res to this cowboy duel. And you're just sort of dropped in and then like whipped back out of it very quickly. So you can tell there is unfinished business there. That is an aberration that means something, but we don't know what it means. We haven't circled back around to it yet.
Yeah, I mean, speaking on that love triangle thing, something else I would like to see. I would like to see more like modern day is not necessarily the right thing, but more like non-traditional romance stuff.
Yes.
Like, is there a time where she falls in love with a woman? Is there a time where she is in some kind of open relationship here and is like dating two people at once and something like that? Is she queer? Is she gay? Is she like, I'd love to see them explore that a little bit more too.
In the storyline where we spend most of the time when she's married to Dawn, I think one of her sons is gay. She talks about helping
implied.
Yes, she talks about how she helped to buy her son a house and then just says, he has a roommate who lives with him and helps him pay the mortgage. That guy's great. I love visiting them both.
Yeah, they have a happy life. I think is what they say about them. And I think she says something, or the narration is like, and she's fine with it. It's like this very non-committal, like I'm not
Yes.
gonna say you're, because I think it's still taking place like in the 60s, right? In the
1963.
exactly. So right, it's not, they're not gonna be like, yeah, and we're gay and all of that stuff, especially
Mm.
in the like Cold War era
Right, and a
stuff in the
lot of
mix of
these
all of that.
are in past times when themes like that would be uncommon or, like, hidden under the surface, only
Right.
referred to, only in subtext. That is the closest we get. I was wondering if we were gonna get one where there's, like, an interracial relationship.
Right. Yeah.
I can imagine that could have been the subject of one of these comic books.
Yeah.
I'm in love with this man. My family doesn't understand. I feel like the world's against us, but we're really in love. We're going to make it happen. We're going to make it work. I would like it to take a turn into the like pulpy lesbian romances,
Yep. Yep.
which are
That'd be
like more
so much fun.
salacious, more scandalous. They're not as when I think of them, there must have been like more just down to earth, grounded, sincere, written about women who love women for women who love women, and not like a third party who's like get a load of this. But
Right.
there are at least other settings and tones and non traditional relationships you can play with, whether it's sincerely or in a more satirical. We're touching on something that was one of the tropes of the day.
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah, would love to see it start playing with some more stuff like that for sure.
Hmm.
But to get back to the cowboy, yeah, I don't know, because like it is this violent way to switch between these
Yeah,
realities, and
very
he's,
bloody.
yeah, he's kind of there to, but it's straight, like he's basically there to kill her almost every time, except the time she gets married, in which he's just like, just came to say you make a beautiful bride, right? And
Mm.
that's it, and he's on his way. Um, but yeah, I want to know more about him, and is he in love with her? Is he related to her in the way that we get a
Mm.
hint at this mother figure? Is he a stilted lover? Is he in? Yeah. There's
Is he the love police? Does everyone see the cowboy? I
right.
was
Does everyone have their
I
own cowboy? Or what does
it's
that
so
imply, that he is almost this like outlaw cowboy and not like a
right.
sheriff
Right, there are
cowboy,
various
right?
types of cowboys. There's good guys, there's bad guys, there's black hats, there's white hats, there's people who follow the law, people who are outlaws. He does seem to be, even if he's not like the full black hat, black suit,
Right.
clearly that's a villain cowboy. He is more on the outlaw side of the spectrum.
Yeah, and that's interesting because he is in more of a policing role, where Joan is often trying to
I
be more wild and aloof, and that
I
seems like something that would line up with him. Like, hey, I understand what you're trying to do. Let me help you out here.
and
But it's
of
not.
course we have to take the image of the cowboy literally. Joan is like a wild animal almost.
Yep,
He's trying to bring her
wrangling them
in. He's
wild
trying to rope
animals.
her. Yeah.
Oh
I'm out
no.
here on I'm out here on the Joan drive, just driving Jones from Montana to Idaho.
Oh no. Um, yeah, because
It's
even stuff like that though does start to align more with the idea of like the expected roles that women are
yeah.
supposed to take, and having a man police that, and having the expectant mother on top of that,
Mm.
right? There is
What
some stuff with that.
what if this has happened to him before and that's how he got out, was to
Mm,
become an enforcer? Will Joan have to become the cowboy in order
yeah,
to escape?
something like that could be
It's
interesting.
so it's so funny that this cowboy figure is in this story. because there's some other piece of media that we have slated for the future that I have enjoyed before and you have not, that has a mysterious cowboy figure in it. Like, weird that that's going to have happened to us twice.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and there's just so much we don't know about the mystery and what's going on, but I'm kind of fascinated with the way that the book does kind of put it on the back burner, or is confident enough to do it slowly, right? It is like there are some books that I feel like by the end of the first volume you need to have been introduced to the mother concept, or by the end of the second you need to have seen her, or you understand who the cowboy is, or at least a little bit, right? I think some people would have put it a little farther along, and this is just doling it out real slow. So good for them. I feel like that speaks confidently about the book, especially with a long wait for volume 3.
Yes.
Here, right? I guess that is kind of the good thing with these creator-owned books on a publisher like Image Comics, is that the creators can kind of get to it whenever they want, and if they need to take a break, they kind of can.
That's good.
And stuff like that, right? I don't know. I've been trying to find, because there was another book that I covered a long time ago on the original Whatnauts podcast here that Elsa Charretier did. And I was trying to find it as I've been talking here, and I can't find it because I don't remember the name.
This is at least the third time you and I have encountered Elsa Charretier, because she did Infinite Loop, which was episode 20. It was review show episode 20. It was in 2018. We were babies.
That's
we just started doing this.
Not on the
and then
Whatnauts podcast.
And then she did some of the Starfire run.
Yes, yeah. That I did remember. I thought Infinite Loop was for some reason on, like, well before your time, Melissa. Back in the old days, you know,
when you had to podcast uphill both ways.
Yeah, before you young whippersnappers came with your fancy Skypes and your discordance.
To record on Skype.
Yo, rest in peace to Skype. They just announced that they are shutting it down.
Dead?
Yeah.
Oh no.
It might not be yet, but yeah, they are. Microsoft is shutting it down. What a huge fumble for. I mean, not that Skype was great, but Zoom came out of nowhere in the pandemic when Skype already existed and was right there, and Microsoft just fumbled that so hard, and then was like, "Oh, hey, Microsoft Teams," and it was like, "But you already have Skype." Anyways,
hi Skype.
Right? Yeah. Skype is now waking up in a new romance story and is
that's where it's gone.
Right? Yeah.
Right. Nothing ever truly dies. It just falls into some sort of an existential dread Tom King pit where it has to live a tropey mid-century modern story forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Before you die, you see the king.
Oh God. Yes, thank you. That was the one I was looking for, because I was going to, at the very least, bring that up during our recommendations, because that is a time travel story, a like romance story with queer love happening in that. And I think at the time I was not super into that book itself, despite being a time travel fan, but it was the like, I think at the time we read that was like, we need stories like this to normalize queer romances on big stories like this, because we weren't getting a lot of it, and we might not be getting much of it in certain places with the way our government is going right now. But yeah, you guys should go check out Infinite Loop too, especially if you do want more of the kind of queer side of
I,
things from Elsa Charretier.
that's all I remember about it. I went back
Yeah,
to our episode description. Like, I cannot tell you the plot of Infinite Loop anymore. All I remember is the lesbian
queer
sex
romance. Yeah, yeah. Which on this book, I is kind of interesting. I think you could. This obviously is not for young readers, but you could certainly hand this to a teenager, right?
Yes.
Because they're like the closest things we get to a sex scene. There's one panel where Joan
Yeah.
is on top of Dawn in bed. They're obviously naked, but you can't see anything
And
because
and
the
and it's
sheet is
they're
covering
separate
her butt.
beds. They're
Well,
separate
yeah,
Lucy and Ricky beds. Yeah.
right. They have separate beds, but there is that one panel where they are in bed together, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, like you can see her back, and that's kind of it, right? So yeah, there is not any like this book is not explicit. It's not sexy. It's not spicy. Like that's not really
No.
the romance kind of stuff that you're getting here in this book, and I think it's better for it.
Mm.
I don't doubt that Tom King and Elsa Chartier could write that in and write it well and depict it well,
I
but
I'd
um
love that turn that after issues and issues of just these chaste 1963 romance novel stories,
right,
it
it's
gets like
the
real spicy.
yeah, or like the first one we get is like the Woodstock free love, like that kind of thing. Then it gets into like, man, does she just say like, you know what, screw it, we're going into the porn industry, and it
Right.
turns into an X and a pearl and a
You know
stuff
what
like
is
that, right?
interesting thinking about these stories? These are all down to earth, grounded human stories. They have not
Yes,
approached anything like the romantasy genre, which has become very prevalent in recent years, has been
yeah,
formally named as such. But I would love to see her fall in love with a vampire. That's where we got to go next is vampire.
vampires, yeah, 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 you could certainly do the like the southern it's certainly
Yeah,
within the realm of time periods we've kind
yes.
of seen.
Yes.
um Even if you want to go with like the wartime one, like this like her
Vampires can go to war.
well, that's not what I was implying, but like we get that story about the soldier in World War I in the trenches, right? And she's over there in Paris, but you could go over to like a Western European nation in the midst of that and have
Sh-
it be a
sh- She meets
Transylvania
Amer
or
she meets American Vampire from the comic American Vampire.
sure, yeah, you get a guest star writer Stephen King to write. We get another king, two kings in one.
2 kings!
Yeah.
One day we're gonna have to do a ranking of all total King stories, and it's Tom King, Stephen King, and Joe Hill, Stephen King's son. He's also invited.
um, God. But yeah, I'd love to see something like that of like where yeah how much of how much fantasy can you get into, how much sci-fi
Yes.
can you get into with these stories while still keeping them very real grounded human stories, because I think that is what the book is centered on, right? These as much as these kind of romantic tropes can get to the dramatic side of things, they are trying to tell real human stories, right?
Hmm.
um because even if the kind of my word for it is Victorian, even if it's not Victorian, but that
We
romance uh
gotta do a history camp sometime just so that we can accurately pinpoint the time period of historical fiction instead of just hand waving at it.
Right, yeah, but like that one where it is the like you're the daughter of the like
Yeah.
housemaid and you're the son of the man of the house here, right? And they have to go do these secret meetings like that trope can
Mhm.
fit in different time periods, whether you want to do like racial boundaries or like country divides, right? Our
Mm.
countries are at war, and that could be like, I mean, that also fits along with the Romeo
Mhm.
and Juliet of things, right? um I feel like you can find that in all sorts of ways. You could do class boundaries, which is kind of is what they were getting at in that thing. But you can do that story in
Mhm.
different time periods,
Yeah.
and it still is this kind of human story of like it. I might not be marrying for money. I might be marrying someone because I truly love them, even if they are
Mhm.
poor or even if they are like
Mhm.
not the most financially stable. Like I want to be with them, um or I want to support this dream that they have here, or I want
Yeah.
to um just run away with them, right? And get away from everything
Mhm.
here. Don't want this, whatever this
Yes.
is. um I think that's stuff that people today still truly feel in all kinds of situations. Um,
Mhm.
so human stories at the heart of this all.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to kind of say about these two volumes here? We've been going on this for about an hour and 15 ish
I
already.
I'm ready. I've got our bingo sheets already open.
All right, all right. I am pulling up the bingo stuff as well. I do have to give a shout out to the stories of that librarian because I
Yeah.
like we got her story in there, but I like this idea of like she just ended up being satisfied by herself. It was just like, you know what?
Mm,
I'm happy by myself, and that's
for a
and
while.
yeah, and of course the cowboy does come to kill her, but I think it's her talking to this younger Joan that maybe gets her to realize she was in love with the life that she had here, and that maybe got her killed. I don't know. Anyways, shout out to that. That's one of my favorite bits in the story too. Okay, I have bingo pulled up on screen.
I
Let's
looked at
see
this.
here. Yeah,
You have a adult who just doesn't understand.
I do have that.
You also have existential and identity crisis. So two big cross offs here. Mine isn't
There's
my
the
bingo sheet
adult
is
one.
not quite as helpful.
Where did I put my
I
existential
have
crisis? There it is. Okay, yeah.
I have the board, and the mother is almost like the board,
I feel
but I
like
don't
that
think it's
is
quite
much more in the spirit of things, at least through what we've seen so far, right? So
mm.
I'm willing to give you that one for sure. There is
In
this
that it's this
mysterious
yes, there's a mysterious
governing
force, a
factor.
council, a person of power who is controlling you. Okay, I will have the board. That might be it for me. She falls
Yeah.
in love with the one guy who is a singer, but he's not a full pop idol.
Yeah, he hasn't made it yet.
This whole series is the equivalent of movie backlot with stock characters walking around, but that's not literally what's happening.
Yeah. Dealing with a pet, uncomfortable dinner party, meeting yourself thanks to time travel. Like that's the weird thing about the librarian Joan meeting the younger Joan, even though it's not the same Joan, but they look
There's
so
always been
like
a
it is.
Joan.
It's the similar, like they have the same hairstyle, like they're drawn the same way. That's where it's hard to tell with where we are in the mystery. so far, and I don't think they're gonna go back to that either,
Mm,
right?
nope.
Yeah, I think that's all I have. We don't we The misunderstood monster could be the cow blah 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 boy, but
Yeah,
we
we're
don't
not
know
there
enough
yet.
about him yet. Yeah. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I guess that's all
Ready
I
for
got.
Yeah, ready for recommendations?
Yeah, let's go into recommendations. Melissa, for people that enjoyed this, what else might they like?
I think you were very accurate in naming The Prisoner,
I
which is
stumbled into that one. Yeah,
a
that's a
weird
great one.
British sci-fi show from the 1960s. This cult show that only lasted like 12
From
or 13 episodes.
1963. I'm gonna look up when that one came out.
Uh, this is a show about a spy who learns something terrible. You never find out what it is, but it's something that makes him resign his position. You see him storm into the office, throw down the resignation letter. He's packing his bags. He's going to get out of town. And the next day he wakes up and he's in this mysterious seaside village where everybody's kind of dressed similarly and everybody has a number badge on their chest. Nobody has names, they only have numbers.
Yeah,
And you learn that he's been sent here because he knows something that nobody else knows, and they're trying to get the information out of him. And every episode, there is a new number two controlling the village. It's always the number two, but it's a new person every episode trying a new gambit to get this information out of him. And he's like, I see your games. I'm not giving you anything. And every episode, he tries to get out of the village.
an escape, even by like mailing himself in a giant box at one point.
It's so. This series is so weird and so it's not a comedy, but it is absurd. Like if you get
Yes.
too far away from the village, a big bubble will come from
It's
swallowed
surrealist.
up by a bubble.
It's surrealist. It's Kafka-esque is how it's
Yes,
often
yes.
described. It's
Oh.
weird. But yeah, this kind of overarching mystery that is keeping you in this
Mhm.
one spot
Mhm.
or like constantly, reviving you into these new
Yes.
mysteries. That is a great recommendation. I second that one for sure.
We also mentioned the horror movie Ready or Not. The Prisoner was episode 299 of the
Yes,
review
thank you.
show.
Yeah.
Ready or Not was episode 91. This is a horror movie about this young woman who is marrying into a very rich family. They are a board game dynasty. They're the equivalent of like Parker Brothers in this world. And they have a tradition that every time a new member of the family gets married, they have to play a game. And she's there with her in-laws first night. She like got married quickly, doesn't know the family super well. And she's like, okay, they play one of the games the family got their fortune on. No, she picks the wrong card to choose the game, and they have to play a deadly game. She has to survive the night.
Yeah.
So you've seen the poster. You've seen Samara Weaving in the wedding dress with the bandolier bullets and the shotgun covered in blood.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The previous, I mentioned we have encountered Elsa Charretier before. She did Infinite Loop way back on episode 20 of the review show. And on episode 214, we read some Starfire solo comics. Yeah. Starfire outside of the Teen Titans or the rest of the DC universe. It's an interesting story where Starfire moves to Key West, Florida, and just tries to live a normal life. She's like, I'm new to Earth. I'm an alien princess. What's human Earth life like?
Yeah.
And she's just like bumbling around, just a bimbo out of water story. I mean, truly, she's just doesn't understand Earth customs and she's so hot, but she doesn't understand that she's hot. That's most of them. She doesn't understand that she's hot, and she doesn't understand that she's strong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or the
And
effect that she has on people. Yeah.
right. She's like, "What do you mean? I don't," and she understands no human words or turns of phrase. Kind of a cute, fun, fluffy little story. And
Yeah.
Elsa Charretier does some of that artwork.
You described it as a good beach read.
Right. Which comic books very rarely are. This is still the only one I think I've found that is a comic book beach read.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
From Tom King, we read The Vision on episode 147, and I could definitely tell reading this that it's from the same writer, reading this Love Everlasting, that it's from the same writer that inspired WandaVision.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
WandaVision is a show that does operate similarly to this, even though it does take a very different structure than The Vision. The DNA is still there.
For
Of
sure.
I am in this idyllic mid-century white picket fence life. There is good stuff here, but I can see the seams. I can. There's a pervasive sense of dread here.
Hmm.
He also did The Human Target, a story within DC Comics. We read that on episode 287. The Human Target. Would you like to take this one?
Sure. Yeah. The human target is about this guy whose job is, as the title suggests, meant to be a human target for his clients. He will take their identity and pose as them to lure out assassins. And this guy gets killed instead of the client. And
Lex Luthor.
Yeah, in this book, he is posing as Lex Luthor, and he gets shot, but he also gets poisoned, and it is the poison that he was not prepared for. It was the shot that he was prepared for, but not the poison, because that's not coming from the assassin that they thought he was working to get right. Like, it's just this, like,
Right.
oh shit, something out of the scope of what I was planning for happened kind of on accident. Now I need to solve my own murder, and I have like a week to figure it out.
Right. It's a slow acting poison. So he has to spend these last days of his life trying to figure out who was trying to kill Lex Luthor,
Yeah.
or if they knew it was really him and they were trying to kill him. As he falls in love with a member of is it the Justice League, Justice Society
Justice
of America?
League International.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But also a 60s set story. King really thrives in this era. This has a lot more of a slick spy movie type feel to it.
Yeah, crime noir, almost James Bond-y, but not necessarily as bombastic in action or set pieces, right? Yeah, just
but that same level of like glamour
suaveness.
to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So good stuff with that one.
Yeah, thank you. That was a recommendation from you. You had already read it, so that's why I threw the summary at you, because you've read it twice.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I get to recommend a weird little movie I saw once that has stuck with me, and I've never had an excuse to talk about it.
Okay.
This is my dad's a big Western guy. And one day he shows me this movie from 1985 called Rustler's Rhapsody. I've never heard of this before or since.
Yeah, never heard of it.
This is a movie where a like 1950s singing cowboy, you can picture that type of a movie, right? It's a Western that's like the clean, bright, chaste, Technicolor Western where the guy's wearing like a powder blue suit and his horse is a cute name and he does backflips and he lands on his horse and then he's got a guitar and he sings a song and he like vaguely has a romance with the local school marm, but they never actually kiss, and then he rides away into the sunset at the end of the movie. You can kind of picture that.
Yeah.
This is a movie about that guy who is aware that he is a serial star in this sort of picture, and he has this sort of omnipotent meta knowledge where as he's going through another story, he knows what's going to happen next. Like he's psychic. And he's like,
Interesting. Yeah.
I know that this man's going to bring a posse to meet us here tomorrow at dawn. And his goofy sidekick is like, well, how many men is he going to have? And he's like, I don't know that for sure. I don't know how many, but I just know what's going to happen because it always happens the exact same way. I live in this perpetual world of tropes and saving the day, singing a song, and
Right.
riding off into the sunset. And it's vaguely gay in that he has these romances with these women, but he never actually kisses them or touches them. It's all very distant and chaste, but he has this like sidekick who he's always around the campfire with. And it's that guy who he lives with. He leaves with at the end of the story.
Just guys paying their mortgage to get together, right?
It's a comedy. There's a couple good gags in it, but it's like it's trying to be Blazing Saddles, like a weird meta version of Blazing Saddles that's like nowhere near on that level. Like when the bad guy rides into town, it's played by one of John Wayne's sons. So it's very steeped in the tropes of the Western genre. I don't know if it's really successful, but it's such a strange combination of ingredients that my dad showed it to me a couple years ago and I keep thinking about it. Like weird that nobody talks about that movie because it's such an oddity.
There's a podcast I listen to that every once in a while, in between when they like cover, big books or a series of something, they will do Hallmark movies as they're like in between. Like, let's just do this dumb palette cleanser. And they stumbled onto a recent one that had Luke Perry in it. And apparently Luke Perry's character in this plays a washed up old movie star, but there are already Hallmark movies starring Luke Perry about his character. It like he exists in a world where he's an actor playing a certain character, but there are Hallmark movies of the character he's playing, and so there's this like weird meta layer that's happening that reminded me of what you were just describing there. So not to say that any of them are good. From what I understand, they're all still just like, it's a Hallmark movie. This is just a neat little like fun fact that like you might not know if you watched just this one thing.
Good for him. And he died in like 2019, so
yeah, so I guess recent may not be the right word. He's still it's 2020 was yesterday. So
right, but interesting that even though at that time Hallmark was already like, we know what we are. We can do this meta story.
Oh yeah. Cool. Only other kind of recommendation I will add on top of that, because I think you covered most of it, was something that if we did not do this book, we were going to do on the podcast here. I think I've recommended them once or twice before on other things. These are the Sunstone comics. A lot less sci-fi. In fact, they're not sci-fi at all. It is a romance story, but it is heavily steeped in like BDSM and stuff like that. So if you do want a like deeply human story that is about romance and relationships and the ins and outs of that, but wanted a little spicier, then I think Sunstone would be great to check out. And it's not all spice, but again, it's steeped in like BDSM relationships and stuff like that. It is not a book of just like, and every page they are having sex and fucking and
like
doing all that stuff.
When you've mentioned it before, it seems like it is about something that is often used as like salacious, spicy, but it's like a very grounded, detailed, down to earth take on what is your life like when this is one of your lifestyles.
Yeah. So I would recommend checking that stuff out. But yeah, I think that is about it for recommendations. So Melissa, we've entered Mecha March. Last night, I went to go see the newest Gundam movie, Mobile Suit Gundam G-Quark or G-Quack. I still don't even know how to pronounce it. It's a dumb name. I think so. Here's the one hint that I will tell you about what the name is. When they find and discover the Gundam and start looking at its code and all of that stuff, they see the name, the like GQUUUUX, and they note that it's a placeholder name in the code. Like, this is not the final name on the
so the
Gundam.
actual name of the movie is going to turn out to be Gundam Dark Avengers.
Right. Yeah, it might be. It's that same like Thunderbolts asterisk, right? And I have a feeling the name is going to be like Mobile Suit Gundam Quantum X or like G Quantum X or something like that. Feels like there's some kind of quantum entanglement happening here in this movie. That's all I will say on that. But we have entered Mecha March because finally, next time on the podcast, we are covering some Gundam. Something I've been wanting to do, hoping to do, wishing, dreaming about for a long time. You know,
it's not my thing, but we've been doing this 7 years. I have to let you do it once. You get one.
I have been allowed to
permitted a single Gundam.
So I'm cashing in my Gundam coupon right now. We had originally planned to do 0080 War in the Pocket, but unfortunately at the moment it is not streaming anywhere right now. So we are going into the compilation movies of the original show. These are available on Netflix. You can find them as just Mobile Suit Gundam 1, 2, and 3. And yeah, just
Roman
these
numerals
three,
because it's classy.
Yeah, indeed. So these 3 movies condense the original, like, I don't remember exactly how many episodes, like 40 something, almost 50-ish episodes into 3 movies. And I'm super excited to talk about them. And finally dive into this, and Melissa will finally understand at least a tiny bit of what I'm talking about and referring to in all of this stuff here. So I'm super excited to dive into all of that. I've also had a Gunpla model kit sitting in my closet for like 2 years. So I'm finally gonna make it this month. I don't know when I'll have it completed by. Maybe I'll have it completed, for next episode, and I can be like, "Look at the Gundam I made." But yeah, I'm super excited about that. So that's why I have named this Mecha March. So there you go, Mobile Suit Gundam, the original compilation movies, and you can find these easily on Netflix. So. Go check it out. But that being said, Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
Just email me the old-fashioned way. Who can bother with social media anymore? Email me at yourhostmelissa@gmail.com and tell me if you have ever heard of Rustler's Rhapsody.
Yeah, or what kind of romance stories you'd like to see in Love Everlasting. Good stuff there. If you guys would like to stay up to date with me, I am at Yo Kyle Springer. And if you would like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at the Whatnauts, we are at thewhatnauts.com on Blue Sky. So please go like, share, and subscribe. That would help us out a ton. If you're watching this on YouTube, we got plenty more videos for you right there on that side of the screen. That would help us out as well. But yeah, this has been number 312 of the Whatnauts review show. We will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.